Welcome to Real Talk, Family Law with Richard LeBovitz.
Hey everybody, welcome into an all-new episode of Real Talk, Family Law with Richard LeBovitz. I'm your host, Mike Leon. Richard here is a seasoned Maryland family law attorney with decades of experience helping clients through divorce, custody disputes, and property division. He's known for his clear, honest guidance and commitment to helping families move forward with confidence. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about what happens to the marital home after a divorce. For many couples, the house is not just their biggest asset, but also the center of family life. And Richard is here to explain all the options, the legal considerations, and really what the Maryland courts look to when deciding the future of the home. Richard, it's good to see you. I want to ask you at the beginning here, is the marital home usually a big concern for most of your clients when they're going through a divorce?
It's nice to see you again. Thanks for having me and working with me on this today. So to answer your question, a marital home is definitely usually the main asset in the divorce, and and obviously there has to be some resolution with regards to the house, and a lot of it depends on essentially how is the house titled. Is it in the either of the parties' names individually, or is it held jointly? That is one of the main concerns to resolve. But at the same token, you have to focus on the fact that for a divorce, marital property is any property, regardless of how titled, from the date of marriage till the date of divorce. So that's the first we have to figure out when was the home purchased. Was it purchased before the marriage or during the marriage? And then also focus on what was the source of funds that were when someone purchased the house. They use their own funds or funds that were created during the marriage as well.
How else do the Maryland courts decide what happens to the family home in a divorce?
Well, so the issue really comes down to, one is how is the house titled, and then also is there a mortgage on the house? So essentially all a judge could really do would be appoint a trustee or somebody essentially to oversee the sale of the house and just order the house to be sold. So obviously it really just depends on, one, who wants to keep the house. Two, can either the husband or wife or either party, can they afford to essentially refinance the house and put it in their name individually? Or are they in a position to take on a home equity line or some other financing to write a check to buy out the equity interest of the other party for the home? Because there's many times when the house may be owned by one or the other spouse individually, and the mortgage in their name, just because the other party didn't have proper credit to have their name added to it. But that doesn't diminish the other party's right to any equity in the house.
So those are the options if one of them wants to keep it. But what usually happens if neither spouse can afford the home on their own?
So if neither party can afford the home, then the house needs to be sold. So then the difference is the court could appoint a trustee to either just auction the house, which when you're auctioning it through the court, usually at an auction, there's a less guarantee of getting a fair market value as opposed to somebody just bidding, say, the value of the mortgage, and you may lose out on the equity. So your best bet is is to agree on the name of a realtor and list the house for sale, and have the parties work with the realtor about selling the house properly and not being passive aggressive or maybe trashing the house or not fixing the house up, or working with the realtor to make sure that the sale goes through smoothly. And then the parties can negotiate essentially how to divide up the net proceeds from the sale.
Does it make it tougher? Because you mentioned a moment ago about mortgages, and does it make it tougher, like a mortgage and equity or even a refinance? Does that impact what happens to the home when the couple's divorcing?
It does. I mean, a lot of it, obviously in the last few years with mortgage rates being what they are now, people say 5-6 years ago may have bought a house with interest rate at say 2.5% to 3%. Now to refinance, it may be 6 to 6.5%. So a lot of people can't afford that. There was a new law that essentially, making it a little bit easier for one spouse to maybe assume the loan. And I know if you have, say, a VA loan or there's certain loans out there that allow you to have special treatment to just assume a loan as opposed to having to refinance. The assuming a loan means you can keep the rate at the lower rate you had initially, as opposed to having to refinance whatever the market rate is. So that's one thing to consider. But when financing is involved, yeah, it involves having the proper credit and then the ability to based on your credit score and a bunch of other factors to figure out, can you in fact afford the payments to refinance the house and take the other opposing spouse's name off of the loan.
Richard, have you seen a decision about who stays in the home being tied to the custody of the children?
Yes, that is definitely a consideration for these. A lot of under prior law and prior understanding, it was always based on whoever the, say, custodial parent would be. That when we used to have what's called a limited divorce or a legal separation, that one spouse would have the ability to stay in the home or have what's called use and possession of the marital home for up to 3 years. And that was understanding that in a perfect world, if you had a child who, say, was a sophomore or junior in high school, the idea would be to allow that child to graduate that high school and live there up to 3 years with their spouse until they would graduate. And that way they would have continuity and graduate from the same high school, as opposed to getting special permission from the school to stay in the school if both parents had to move out of the school district.
Richard, what mistakes have you seen people make in your years of experience when maybe they try to negotiate the home on their own and they don't fully understand the legal and financial consequences? What mistakes have you seen them make?
So major mistakes kind of falls back again was at the outset of how's the house titled. I've seen people who say they're focused on getting a divorce and they get their divorce, but they forget to even mention the house. So now you're divorced, but the house is still there. Now you have an issue of two people who own a house but no longer married, and you're still trying to force the other party to either buy you out. Where during the marriage you have the ability to address the house, but when you're no longer married, it's more complicated. That's one mistake. The other mistake is when the house is owned by one party or the other, even during the marriage, forgetting that it's technically still marital property, because lots of parties tend to believe that, oh, if my spouse owned the house before we got married or bought the house during the marriage and doesn't have to refinance anything, it's their house and I have no rights to it. And they forget about that, or they'll allow the divorce to go through, and they're essentially leaving money on the table. So that, to me, that's really the main issue.
So, Richard, what's your advice then to someone who's maybe listening to this right now? They're worried about losing their home in an upcoming divorce. What would a piece of advice you would give to them right now?
I would strongly encourage them to, again, reach out to myself or another family law professional to essentially even have a very quick consultation to discuss what their rights are as to marital property. It's very important that they should be an informed consumer to understand what their rights are. I've done consults just recently where the parties just had no idea that maybe a possible personal injury claim or their home or some other asset, oh, that's their house. It's always been my spouse's house. I don't think I'm entitled to anything, when in fact they do have a right. And the courts will enforce it. Again, even if the house was owned prior to the marriage, we would take the date of marriage evaluation of the house, and if the house is appreciated since the wedding, since the marriage, then the parties are still entitled to some equity in the house. So again, you have to talk to a professional to understand what your rights are.
That's right. It should be the title of the episode. Talk to a professional. Richard, thank you for the time and insights. Truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you again, Mike, for your insight and helping consumers understand what their rights are involving this very important topic.
And thank you to everybody out there listening to this episode of Real Talk Family Law with Richard LeBovitz. If you're going through a divorce right now, you got questions maybe about your home, your property division, or maybe even other family law issues, Richard can help you understand your options, protect your future like you just heard him tell you. Do me a favor, visit LeBowitzFamilyLaw.com today to learn more or schedule a consultation. And don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review and comment, or share the episode with someone who needs to hear it. As always, I'm Mike Leon. We'll see everybody next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.